Welcome to the waking dream. Return to your center and let's begin. Have you ever had the feeling that your life is repeating itself? Different day, different people, different circumstances, yet somehow the same problems keep showing up, the same worries, the same disappointments, the same outcomes, and maybe you've wondered, why does this keep happening to me? What if the answer is much simpler than you think? What if the life you're living right now is following a script? Not because someone is controlling you, not because you're powerless, but because you're moving through reality on autopilot, repeating the same thoughts, the same reactions, and the same expectations over and over again. Most people spend their entire lives reacting to what is happening around them. They wait, they hope, they worry, they try to solve problems after they appear. But what if there was another way? What if you could influence events before they happen? What if the future is shaped not when the event arrives, but in the moments before it arrives? In today's lesson, we're going to explore one of the most powerful ideas in reality transurfing, the ability to shift to a different lifeline by setting reality before reality happens. And there's something very important that most people completely miss. They try to change the frame they are already standing in. That's why they fail. Later in this video, I'll show you the simple shift that changes everything. Once you understand it, you'll never look at problems, expectations, or even your future in the same way again, because the reality you're experiencing right now may not be the reality you're moving toward, and learning the difference can change your life. Before we go any further, let's briefly revisit the key idea from the previous lesson, because today's technique won't make much sense unless you understand this foundation. In reality transurfing, changing your reality does not begin with changing the outside world. It begins with changing your state. Most people spend their lives asleep, not physically asleep, but mentally asleep. They move from one situation to another automatically. They react automatically. They worry automatically. They repeat the same emotional patterns automatically. And because their reactions stay the same, their reality stays the same too. The first step is to wake up, to notice yourself, to become aware of where your attention is and what is happening inside you. The second step is activating the intention braid, that subtle feeling we discussed in previous lessons. A feeling that is not based on force, struggle, or wishing. It is a calm certainty, a quiet knowing. The third step is setting reality, not hoping, not begging, not waiting, setting. This is where most people make a mistake. They treat reality like something that happens to them. But transurfing suggests something very different. Reality responds to the frame you illuminate with your attention and intention. And that brings us to today's lesson, because once you learn how to set reality consciously, a fascinating question appears. If reality can be influenced, why do so many people continue living the same life year after year? Why do they keep repeating the same experiences? Why do they keep ending up in the same situations? The answer may surprise you. According to transurfing, it happens because most people are not choosing the movie they are watching. They're simply following the script of the movie they're already inside. And once you understand what that means, you'll begin to see your everyday life in a completely different way. But before we go deeper, if you're enjoying these lessons and want to continue exploring reality transurfing step by step, make sure to subscribe to the channel. Each lesson builds on the previous one, and together they form a complete system for understanding how reality works. Now let's explore a strange idea. What if the reason your life keeps repeating itself is not because reality is against you, but because you're following a script without realizing it? At first, this sounds impossible. After all, you make your own decisions, don't you? You choose where to work. You choose who to talk to. You choose what to do tomorrow. At least, that's what it seems. But let's take a closer look. Imagine waking up tomorrow morning. Before you even get out of bed, you reach for your phone. You check messages. You scroll through social media. You read the news. A headline annoys you. A comment upsets you. A bill reminds you of a problem. Without noticing, your emotional state has already been set. Now the rest of the day begins to unfold from that state. The same thoughts appear, the same worries return, the same reactions follow. And by evening, you've created another version of yesterday, not because someone forced you to, not because life is unfair, but because the script continued exactly where it left off. Think about how often people say, "Nothing ever changes. The same things keep happening to me. Why do I always attract these situations?" The answer may be simpler than they think. They are moving through the same sequence of thoughts, emotions, and expectations, and those patterns keep connecting them to the same versions of reality. According to Reality Transurfing, most people don't consciously choose the lifeline they're moving through. They simply continue along the one they're already on. Like a train moving down tracks it never questions. The train doesn't decide where it's going. It simply follows the rails beneath it. And in the same way, many people spend years following invisible tracks created by old habits, old beliefs, old fears, and old expectations. This is why two people can experience the same event completely differently. One person sees an opportunity, the other sees a problem. One person expects success, the other expects failure. One person moves toward a new lifeline, the other remains where they are. The event is the same. The script is different. And here's where things become really interesting. Most people believe they are creating their future through action alone. But action is only part of the equation. Before every action comes a thought. Before every thought comes a perception. And before perception comes the state from which you're viewing reality. That state acts like a filter. It determines what you notice, what you ignore, what you believe is possible, and what you believe is impossible. So before we talk about changing a lifeline, we need to understand something even more important. Who exactly is following the script, and how do we become aware of it? To answer that, let's look at one of the most fascinating metaphors in reality transurfing. The idea that life is very much like a movie already recorded on film. Let's take this idea one step further. Imagine you're watching a movie. The characters on the screen are laughing, arguing, making plans, falling in love, and overcoming obstacles. To them, everything feels real. Every decision seems important. Every event seems unpredictable. But you, the viewer, know something they don't. The entire movie already exists. The ending already exists. Every scene is already recorded. The characters simply move through it, frame by frame. Now here's the uncomfortable question. What if your life works in a similar way? Not in the sense that you're powerless, not in the sense that everything is fixed forever, but in the sense that there are countless possible lifelines already existing as variations of reality. And at any given moment, you're moving through one of them. This idea may sound unusual at first, but think about your dreams. When you're dreaming, the dream feels real. You rarely stop and say, "Wait a minute, this is a dream." Instead, you accept everything that happens, the strange situations, the impossible events, the sudden changes. You simply participate. Only after waking up do you realize that you were inside an illusion. According to Reality Transurfing, something similar happens during ordinary life. Most of the time, we're completely absorbed in the current frame of reality. We become lost in our problems, lost in our worries, lost in our plans, lost in our emotions. And because our attention is fully captured, we never stop to ask an important question. Am I consciously choosing my direction, or am I simply following the next scene of an old script? This is why self-awareness is so important. The moment you wake up and observe yourself, something changes. For a brief moment, you step out of the role. You become both the actor and the observer. You notice your thoughts instead of being controlled by them. You notice your emotions instead of being dragged around by them. You notice your reactions instead of automatically acting on them. And in that moment, a small space appears, a space between the script and your awareness. Most people never notice that space. They see a problem and immediately react. They see bad news and immediately worry. They encounter a delay and immediately become frustrated. The script pulls a string, and the character responds again and again, day after day, year after year. But the awakened observer sees something different. The observer begins to notice the mechanism. The observer realizes, I don't have to automatically follow this scene. And this realization is the beginning of real change, because you cannot choose a different lifeline while you're completely hypnotized by the current one. You first have to wake up inside the movie, and once you do, something remarkable becomes possible. You begin to understand that the future is not created only by what is happening now. It is also influenced by where your attention is directed next. And that brings us to an important question. If we can wake up from the script, what exactly keeps pulling us back into it over and over again? There are 3 major traps that keep people locked inside the same reality, and most people don't even realize they exist. So if we have the ability to wake up, observe ourselves, and choose a different direction, why do most people remain trapped in the same reality? According to Reality Transurfing, there are 3 major traps, and the interesting thing is that they are almost invisible. Most people don't even know they're caught in them. Let's look at the first one. Trap number 1, not knowing you're inside a script. This is the easiest trap to understand. If a fish spends its entire life in water, it never questions the water. To the fish, that's simply reality. The same thing happens to us. We become so accustomed to our routines, our beliefs, our emotional reactions, and our daily struggles that we stop questioning them. We assume, this is just who I am. This is how life works. Things will probably always be this way. And the moment you accept that, the script becomes stronger, because you stop looking for alternatives. You stop noticing possibilities. You stop imagining different outcomes. You become a passenger instead of a creator. But even when people begin to understand this, another trap immediately appears. Trap number 2, reactive thinking. This one is much more powerful. Imagine you're having a good day. Everything feels fine. Then suddenly you receive an unpleasant message. or someone criticizes you, or a problem appears unexpectedly. What happens next? Most people immediately dive into the problem. All their attention goes there. All their energy goes there. All their emotions go there. The problem becomes the center of their reality. And from that moment on, they're no longer directing reality. They're reacting to reality. Think about it. How many times have you spent hours replaying a conversation in your head? How many times have you worried about something that hadn't even happened yet? How many times have you mentally lived inside a problem for days? This is exactly how the script keeps control. It captures your attention, and wherever attention goes, energy follows. Instead of illuminating the future you want, you illuminate the problem you fear. And then the third trap appears, the most subtle one of all. Trap number 3, the template of limitation. This is the invisible boundary around your reality. It's the collection of beliefs that tells you what is possible and what is impossible. For example, people like me don't succeed. I'm too old to start over. Things never work out for me. That kind of life is for other people. This technique can't possibly work. Whether these beliefs are true doesn't matter. The moment you accept them, they become part of your personal reality. And then you stop looking beyond them. You begin filtering reality through those limitations. You only notice evidence that supports them. You ignore evidence that challenges them. And before long, the script feels absolutely real. But here's the good news. The moment you can see these 3 traps, they begin to lose their power. Because awareness breaks the spell. The observer wakes up. And once the observer wakes up, a new possibility appears. You stop asking, "What will happen to me?" And you begin asking, "What reality am I choosing next?" That single shift changes everything, because from this point forward, the goal is no longer to wait for reality. The goal is to start directing it. And to do that, we must understand one of the most important principles in all of reality transurfing. You cannot change the frame you're standing in. You can only influence the frame that is approaching. This is where many people make a critical mistake. They discover transurfing. They learn about intention. They learn about awareness. And then they immediately try to change what is already happening. But that is like trying to stop a movie by arguing with the scene currently on the screen. The scene is already playing. The frame has already arrived. Imagine you're driving a car. You suddenly notice that you're heading in the wrong direction. What would be the smartest thing to do? Would you become angry at the road? Would you fight the steering wheel? Would you spend hours complaining about where you are? Of course not. You would simply change direction. You would focus on where you're going next. Yet in everyday life, most people do exactly the opposite. Something happens that they don't like. A bill arrives. A relationship becomes difficult. A plan falls apart. A delay appears. And instead of directing their attention toward the next frame, they become trapped inside the current one. They replay it, analyze it, complain about it, fear it, fight it, and in doing so, they give even more energy to the reality they want to escape. This is one of the most important ideas in reality transurfing. The current frame is the result of previous choices, previous states, previous expectations, and previous attention. In a sense, it is old news. It is the echo of what was already set in motion. That doesn't mean you should ignore reality. It doesn't mean pretending problems don't exist. It simply means understanding where your true power exists. Your power exists in the next frame, the frame that has not fully materialized yet. the frame that is approaching. Think about a conversation you're going to have tomorrow, or an appointment next week, or a situation that makes you nervous. Most people mentally rehearse failure. They imagine what could go wrong. They prepare for disappointment, and then they're surprised when reality reflects those expectations. But imagine doing something different. Imagine pausing for a moment, waking up, activating awareness, and calmly setting the next frame. Not with force, not with desperation, but with certainty. Instead of asking, "What if this goes badly?" you begin asking, "What reality am I choosing to move toward?" That single question changes your focus completely, because now you're no longer reacting, you're directing. You're no longer fighting the current frame. You're illuminating the next one. And this brings me to a personal experience, a simple situation that helped me understand this principle in a way no book ever could. I remember a period in my life when it felt as though nothing was moving forward. No matter what I did, I kept running into delays. Plans would almost work out and then suddenly fall apart. Opportunities would appear and disappear, and the more frustrated I became, the more obstacles seemed to show up. At the time, I thought the problem was outside of me. I thought circumstances were against me. I thought I simply needed to try harder. But one day, I noticed something interesting. Before every disappointing outcome, I was already expecting it, not consciously, very subtly, almost automatically. Whenever something important was approaching, I would immediately begin imagining everything that could go wrong. What if they say no? What if this doesn't work? What if I fail? What if I waste my time? Without realizing it, I was constantly setting a frame of uncertainty. Then one morning, before an important conversation, I decided to do something different. Instead of rehearsing problems, I stopped. I woke up. I became aware of my thoughts, and I asked myself, what reality am I choosing right now? Not what I hoped for, not what I feared, what I was choosing. I closed my eyes for a moment and imagined the conversation already unfolding smoothly. Nothing dramatic, nothing magical, just calm, easy, natural. I imagined myself feeling relaxed. I imagined the other person being open and cooperative. I imagined leaving the conversation with a sense of relief. Then I let it go. I didn't force it. I didn't keep repeating affirmations all day. I simply set the frame and moved on. And something interesting happened. The conversation went far better than I expected. Not perfectly, but noticeably differently. People who normally seemed difficult became easier to communicate with. Solutions appeared more naturally. Tension disappeared. For the first time, I realized something important. The biggest change wasn't outside me. The biggest change happened before the event even began. I had stopped feeding the old script. I had stopped preparing for failure. I had stopped moving toward a frame I didn't want. Instead, I consciously illuminated a different possibility. Was it magic? No. Was it mind control? Of course not. But it showed me something that I later noticed again and again. The quality of the next frame often depends on the state from which you enter it. And most people never think about that. They spend hours preparing for problems. Very few spend even 60 seconds preparing for the reality they actually want. That realization changed the way I approached everyday life. And once I understood it, I began noticing the same principle everywhere. Before meetings, before difficult conversations, before decisions, before opportunities, before challenges. The next frame was always approaching, and I always had a choice: continue feeding the old script or consciously choose a new one. So how exactly do we do that? How do we stop reacting and start setting reality deliberately? Let's break the process down into a simple technique you can begin using today. So let's bring everything together. If you followed this lesson from the beginning, you've already seen the pattern. Most people wait for reality to happen, then they react. But the practice of reality transurfing is different. You set reality before reality happens. And the good news is that this doesn't require special abilities. It doesn't require years of practice. It starts with a simple shift in awareness. Here is the process. Step 1. Catch yourself. This is the most important step because nothing can change until you notice what's happening inside you. The moment you catch yourself worrying, expecting failure, replaying negative scenarios, or emotionally reacting to an upcoming event, pause. Just pause. Don't judge yourself. Don't fight your thoughts. Simply notice them. Awareness is already breaking the old script. Step 2. Wake up. Ask yourself a simple question. Am I choosing this state, or am I being pulled into it? That question instantly creates distance between you and the automatic reaction. You stop being the character. You become the observer, and the observer always has more freedom than the character. Step 3. Activate intention. Now return to that quiet inner certainty we discussed in previous lessons. Not wishing, not hoping, not forcing, just knowing. A calm confidence that says, I am consciously choosing my direction. This feeling is very different from desperation. Desperation pushes, intention directs. Step 4. Set the next frame. This is where the real work begins. Think about the event that is approaching. A conversation, a meeting, a decision, a challenge. Now ask yourself, what reality do I want to move toward? Not what you hope will happen, what you choose. See it briefly, feel it briefly. Keep it simple, natural, relaxed. Don't create a fantasy, create a direction. You are not trying to force reality. You are selecting a path through reality. Step 5. Release it. This is where many people fail. They set the frame and then immediately start worrying again. They check for results. They look for proof. They become impatient. And in doing so, they return to the old script. Instead, let it go. You've already given the instruction. Now allow reality to move. Trust the process. Step 6. Repeat daily. The power of this technique doesn't come from doing it once. It comes from consistency. Every day, dozens of future frames approach you. Phone calls, conversations, decisions, unexpected situations. Each one is an opportunity. Each one is a doorway. Each one allows you to practice conscious reality selection. And over time, something remarkable begins to happen. You stop feeling like life is happening to you. You begin feeling that you're participating in the creation of your experience, not through force, not through control, but through awareness, intention, and direction. And before we finish, there's one final insight I want to leave you with, because it may completely change the way you look at your future. As we come to the end of this lesson, I want you to remember one simple idea. Your future is not created only by the events that happen to you. it is also shaped by the state from which you meet those events. Most people spend their lives waiting for circumstances to improve, waiting for confidence to appear, waiting for luck, waiting for the perfect moment. But while they're waiting, they continue feeding the same script, the same fears, the same expectations, the same reactions, and then they wonder why nothing changes. Reality Transurfing offers a different approach. It invites you to wake up, to become aware, to stop living automatically, and to begin consciously choosing the direction of your attention. Because attention is not just observation. Attention is selection. Every day, countless possible versions of reality exist before you. And every day, your thoughts, emotions, expectations, and intentions influence which of those versions becomes your experience. You don't need to control everything. You don't need to force outcomes. You don't need to fight reality. You simply need to stop unconsciously feeding the reality you don't want and start consciously illuminating the reality you do want. So here's a simple challenge for the next 24 hours. Pay close attention to yourself. Every time you catch yourself worrying about an upcoming event, every time you catch yourself expecting a problem, every time you catch yourself mentally rehearsing failure, stop, wake up, and ask yourself, what reality am I choosing right now? Then consciously set the next frame, just once, calmly, without force, without anxiety, without attachment, and see what happens. Not because you're trying to control reality, but because you're learning to participate in it consciously. You may be surprised by how often life begins to respond differently when you stop repeating the old script. If this lesson helped you see reality from a new perspective, make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications. Many people watch these lessons but never subscribe, and that makes it much harder for this channel to grow and reach others who are searching for these ideas. So if you want to continue this journey through Reality Transurfing, subscribe now and join us for the next lesson. Because in the next lesson, we're going to explore an even deeper question. If reality is made of frames, and if we can influence which frame comes next, then what is the force that actually connects us to one lifeline instead of another? Understanding that principle may completely change the way you think about choice, intention, and reality itself. Until next time, own your reality.